and it becomes the kind of thing, like, just as a consumer, because there's so many mediums, you're like, it doesn't look like the way I was hoping it would look. And for us, when we looked at it from a film perspective, I didn't want that stigma when I was going out pitching it of, I don't really see a 16-year-old doing this. It's like, yes, you do. There was one doing it, you know? Right. I don't really see that kind of look for the cop. It's like, well, did you like him? Because that's a real person. Doesn't mean you have to cast those people. Right. But, like, don't tell me that you can't translate that visually onto the screen because it was already translated onto a screen. It's not just been...
Has every writer ever said this, by the way? This is kind of the thing we've been talking about recently is you have this great story and you want to get it into film because that appears to be where the money is, how everyone feels like it's such a success, right? Mm-hmm. Right? Which may be a misnomer in and of itself, right? But to do that, you have so many people you have to compromise with. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So many production groups and this, that, and the other, and they see it this way and not that way. 100%. And so you're every step of the way, you're like, well, I'm going to stay true to my art, but your art's not going to be worth a lot if it never gets viewed.
Mm-hmm. True.
So where do you draw that line? These characters aren't American enough or whatever, or they're too gay or whatever you want to call it, you know? And so that's the problem is they're like, well, we don't see a 16-year-old being this, I don't know, violent.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
We know they are.
Right.
We know they can be. What is it about you that prevents that from being
especially,
true?
And I happen to agree with that even as it relates to with a film. I understand, look, especially when you're talking about big budget stuff and this story in particular, you know, it's planes, it's action, it's, you know, it's a lot up there. I imagine, even Red Tails, which was done pretty cheaply, is still a, you know, $75 million movie. Absolutely, you can't not do it for that amount of money and that kind of investment. Forget the creativity part of it. I understand from a businessman's perspective, you're talking about an investment in $75 million for a 3 to 5 year rollout that you're going to commit to, hoping you're going to get a return on top of that, so much so that you're willing to put aside that, you know, the discretionary development budget and the amount of attachments that you're putting in there. Right. And the amount of money that you're spending on this and not going after other projects that clearly will come out during that time. And you're going to say, this is the one that we're going to go out with. And studios have been reducing their film slates to bit higher budgets in, which, you know, for like 12 productions, you're one of 12 at, you know, only 5 studios. Right. I understand the point there being like, really, I understand as an artist, you think this is the greatest thing ever, but really, let's break it down. This thing being made has to be a safe investment. Exactly. And I understand that. I've never not understood that from the studio's perspective, that you have to balance between what you want to do for art and what you have to understand as a safe investment. When you become Christopher Nolan and you have a crazy idea like Inception or Interstellar, Christopher Nolan is the safe investment. Yes. Whatever he puts out has been earned. Right. And so for those breaking in, it became, how do you create a safety net for your ideas? How do you create something that gives them reason to put it to the top because you already know something's going well? Actors now are dealing with that on Instagram followers and Twitter followers and all that stuff. How many subscribers to your YouTube web series? Right. And that becomes a big consumer point with actors. Oh, they have 500,000 followers. Oh, safer bet to put in this that we're going to get eyeballs on the screen.
It could mean they know how to solicit followers, though.
Also true. Yeah. But you know, at least it's a number. It's a tangible
it's
number.
It's something to start working from.
Right. So for a writer's perspective, and my brother is much more on the directing side when it comes to film, and you're looking at that and saying, well, you don't have the budget to go off and do it yourself to at least compete in that market. Well, when you're making comics, as a writer, you can pretty much publish it yourself. You can make the comic yourself, and you can do it at a budget that is reasonable, that you can make a comic that doesn't feel like, oh, you're in the minor leagues against these guys. It's like, no, that book 100% stands toe-to-toe with the quality of a Marvel book. Whether people buy it or not is a different story. But it's the exact same quality that if you market it right, if you get it to the right people, or if it explodes the way a great story can, it's going to be right there with those.
It stands on its own merits at that point.
Exactly. Yeah. And so when you're looking at that from a film slate and saying, oh my God, there's this book that's rising from these ashes that I didn't even know about, you know, whether you do know anything about comics or not, at least you can hold this and be like, I believe that this is a comic book. And even if you just create that stigma, you've created the right pitch to go along with your story. I mean, Men in Black sold 400 copies. No one ever heard of Men in Black, the comic book. But it was a comic book. It was, you know, it existed.
I didn't know about it till just now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I have no idea. Yeah. I have no idea it's a comic book. because they didn't want to market the comic book angle because they thought comic movies wouldn't sell. They just wanted to sell Will Smith in Aliens, and they did right, and that was a great film.
Right.
We're talking also from a artist perspective or a producer's perspective. Mm-hmm. But I also think of things from the consumer's perspective, because I love great novels and I love great movies, and I wonder why aren't there better stories out there? And the reason is because the market, as much as it is opening up, like a lotus flower at the same time, it also seems to be getting sort of shut down in some ways. And so the question is, we have self-production capabilities now that we never did before.
Yeah.
Through the internet. But at the same time, I see the same 2 or 3 massive conglomerates eating up all the oxygen in the room.
Absolutely.
So I wonder where it's actually going to be going exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, as a consumer, I hope to see some really good movies. But are they going to all be indie flicks?
It's true. And I think, as much as I'm a big comic book movie guy, like I happen to agree spending $250 million, sometimes to me it's like I'd rather see $10-25 million gambles. And I understand they're not going to make as much money. And so it's a very hard thing to say when you know the profit will be there. Mm-hmm. The question is, will the profit always be there? Is every $150 million budget really worth it? And I understand that's branding. I mean, is Terminator Genesis really worth it?